Hey, Dr. Ron, how are you?
Hi, Douglas. How are you? Great to talk to you again. My
Yeah, nice
pleasure.
to talk to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Let's see. I don't know where to start. There's so much on your sheet here, but why don't you just give us a little bit of your background and then we'll go from there. I know you got a film, so
Right.
let's just tell us a little about yourself first and then we'll talk about your film.
Okay, just a very brief history in the background. It all started back when I went to work at NASA at 17 years old. Spent 2 years there working in the student program. I was a student at the University of Maryland studying math and physics. I started taking psychology classes, and then I was shocked to realize that many of the major theories of psychology could be explained with quantum physics, topological mathematics, and calculus. So I started working on that, spent many years on this project, left NASA, spent many years becoming a psychologist and traveling the world, teaching classes and whatnot, working with lots of patients to figure out what this all means. So I came up with a new theory called quantum field psychology, which we published in 2004, and that went over like a lead balloon. It's a psychological
Mhm.
theory based on math and physics. So a lot of psychologists don't, really are not enthused by that. So we decided to make some films. The most recent film is called The Endless Question, which is a 2-hour documentary about this whole topic. We interview a lot of people, get into some of Nikola Tesla's work and so forth, explain how the mind works as an energy field, which transcends the physical brain, is the whole concept.
Okay, why would the psychology community not be thrilled about your work?
Well, basically, what happens is that when a new theory comes along, it takes a long time to kind of infuse the system and be accepted. There's a joke I heard at NASA, in fact, many years ago. I've been there a year or two, and this one scientist said, there's a story where a scientist walks into a room of 10 guys, and these 10 of those scientists have their own theories about a certain phenomenon. He's done a lot of new research. He has all this new information and so forth to finally answer the question once and for all. So he presents his data up on a board, and all the other 10 scientists sit there and they kind of scratch their chins, and after a minute they all go, aha, you see, I was right. So the human ego gets into it, and people tend to think in terms of their own preconceptions and so forth. So it takes a while to infuse the community. Plus, this is based on math and physics. A lot of psychologists really are more verbally oriented and not mathematically oriented. But we find that engineers, physicists, mathematicians do tend to understand the theory a lot more. So we made the film make it a lot easier, basically. So that's the whole idea behind that. Make it easy, hopefully. So,
Okay, actually,
yeah,
that does make sense because
yeah.
if by some chance that science and mathematics can prove something inconclusively, right, or
Mm-hmm.
conclusively,
Yes.
then
Mm-hmm.
you could be proving that a lot of these psychologists were wrong
And that's
all the
dangerous, right?
way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not necessarily that it's wrong, it's just like a whole new paradigm to shift into. So it takes all the prior theories and shows how that when you combine math, physics, topology, and all the major theories with Eastern and Western philosophies, that creates a whole new paradigm to explain that the mind as an energy field makes perfect sense. So, for example, going back to Thomas Young's research in 1801, he was a medical doctor in England and also studying physics. He's what's called a polymath, where a polymath will study many fields in great depth to find the connection points between them. So he created what's called the double slit experiment, a very famous study, which proved that light energy travels through space as in waveform, as waves. This has been argued about since 1637 by Huygens, debated by Newton, Descartes, and so forth. Many people argued about this. He finally proved that it travels as waves. And then later it was shown that light interacts with matter and so forth as particles. So it occurred to me way back in 69, the epiphany that hit me was, what if thought energy travels through space in the same form, travels as thought waves, interacts with particles, or with matter as particles. So I started to research that, and that's what led to the entire evolution of this theory. And yes, you're right, it would cause a lot of controversy with people, and they have certain ways of looking at things, and this kind of shocks their whole system. So yes, we've had a lot of resistance over the years and so forth, sabotage, backstabbing, and so forth. But you got to expect that. That's what it has with new ideas.
So with
So,
this theory,
mhm,
in theory, at
right,
some point we should be able to see our thoughts, correct?
exactly. Now, if we once we develop the technology to do that, we now have MRIs and PET scans and so forth. We've really
Right.
CAT scans. We moved ahead massively in terms of being able to see the energy fields around the body and so forth in the brain. Once we can see the energy fields projecting from the mind, from the body, that will show that this makes perfect sense. There is the study, I'm sure you've heard of Kirlian photography, where you can look at a physical entity like a plant or a hand or whatever and see the energy fields around the living entity. And if you, like, say, cut off a leaf from a plant, you still see the same energy field there. So there's an energy body there. You've removed the physical aspect of it, which is really fascinating. So there's a whole new world of science we're getting into here, and it's going to open up, I think, a lot of new research. In fact, Tesla said famously that once we start to research the electromagnetic aspects of the mind and so forth, it will make more progress in 10 years than we made in all human history beforehand. And I think we're seeing that right now. It's happening worldwide. Folks are really getting into this type of research. It's going to happen. Big things are coming. Yeah.
Somebody was telling me, and I cannot remember who, but one of the guests I had on the show said that they were doing some kind of research like this in Japan, where they were actually trying to record people's dreams that they could play back later when the person was awake. Now, I don't know how great the recording was, whether it was just waveforms or actual videos or pictures or what. But have you heard anything about that?
Well, something about that, yeah. I know it's been getting researched, and we're trying to, again, develop the technology to make that a lot more perfect. You can record the waveforms, of course. The brain goes through a lot of different waveform patterns in different stages of sleep. There's like 4 stages of sleep and then REM. And the brain waves keep changing when a person is moving down towards REM. And in REM, you're actually reliving dreams and so forth, or having dreams, living experiences, or you're involved in imagination and so forth. And the brainwave patterns are called paradoxical sleep because it's very similar to your waking state of consciousness. But being able to pick up the actual imagery, that's a whole new advance ahead. That'd be a huge jump. I'd like to see what they found on that. How recently was that done? Do you know offhand?
From what I remember, I guess it's ongoing.
Yeah,
they were doing it in
right.
Japan. I know he was specific about Japanese researchers were doing it.
Yeah, well, we know that Emoto did some research on that where he found that he could concentrate certain thoughts, as it were, or speak certain commands to water, then crystallize the water and change the patterns that were crystallized profoundly. So like peace and love showed very beautiful patterns of crystallization, whereas anger, hate, or certain names through history that were evil people showed up in really miscreant type formations. So we know that thought energy can influence ice crystals. So it's really fascinating. We know that sound energy also affects matter profoundly. So you can take like a board and have sand on it, and certain patterns or notes of music change the patterns of the formation of the matter on the board. So thought energy and sound energy do affect the physical universe profoundly, but we're just starting to understand how that works. There's a lot more to be discovered.
Well, that brought up the image of Ella Fitzgerald singing and smashing a glass.
Exactly.
That her voice was so powerful she could break glass with it. Yeah.
Yeah, she hit the exact frequency of the glass, which made it break. It's also the ancient story of the walls of Jericho, where the troops marched around a certain city, and the pattern of marching, and they also were, I guess, intonating certain sounds. Supposedly the frequency, it's been alleged, make the walls eventually collapse. There's also a lot of thought about the pyramids, for example. How did they move these massive, massive tons of granite to build the pyramid? I mean, we have the imagery of the slaves, pulling these big, massive granite blocks along over the sand with logs. That's totally ridiculous because the weight is so heavy it wouldn't work. And trying to lift them up on a crane, a wooden crane and ropes, that's not the way they were built. It couldn't be. So it had to be an earlier technology to get that accomplished. Plus the laser cut on the surface is so fine, it's amazingly smooth. Our lasers today have a hard time to duplicate that. So it had to be an earlier technology. A lot of research needs to be done also on the power of sound and anti-gravity. And I think that's going on as well behind the scenes.
So to this day, we don't really know how they were able to build the pyramids.
Exactly. We really don't. There's a lot of speculation, but it's not been discovered yet. Some folks think it was alien, influence, who knows what, or just at least certainly I'd say earlier technology that people on this planet had, one form or another.
Wow.
So, yeah, lots being discovered now. It's really great stuff. So our research is an attempt to integrate science with spirituality, showing that mind is energy, which then connects to the scientific world in a totally different way. It makes sense then that with this theory that we are spiritual beings. We can understand that we're not just energy beings, but we are spiritual beings. It connects up science and spirit. Deepak Chopra and those guys are looking for a bridge theory between the two, and quantum field psychology does do that. It shows there's a connection and makes it believable that there's a mathematical basis to it and a physics basis to it, to see as the mind is energy and transcends the physical brain.
Okay, so your film is called The Endless Question.
Right.
Is that actually the endless question?
Well, the endless question itself is who are we? Why are we here? What's our purpose on life? What's our mission on earth, and so forth? That's a question folks have asked for, thousands or millions of years. And we attempt to answer that to some small degree by the idea that there's a whole new paradigm to understand that we are energy beings, that we have a higher mind, as it were, which is part of who we are, that the very core of our being is a higher self, probably a divine self, a seed of divine consciousness, I would say, which transcends the physical brain. So the ego mind tends to think it's supreme and whatnot, and we get stuck in the senses. And the ego mind or lower mind is really controlled by the lower emotions like anxiety, guilt, fear. And most folks get stuck in that type of world, so they create a cloud of consciousness around their mind, and they see the world through a glass darkly. When in fact, when you focus on the inner mind, the higher mind, you connect with a higher source of energy and insight and information, which then can help guide you in life, give you answers. In fact, some folks who did that incredibly were Nikola Tesla, who would go into a state of deep concentration and access the world of abstract thought. He could build an engine there, like a new electric motor, and build it perfectly, then watch it run and observe the frictional impact upon the engine, and then build it in the physical world perfectly, and it ran perfectly as well. So it was amazing. Now, another guy who did this was, of course, Mozart, who could write an entire symphony note for note. Think about that, right? Every instrument, note for note, perfect, by hearing it in his mental ear, as it were, and then put it down on paper, and then have a symphony played, and it came out perfect. Now, most musicians can't do that. I'm sure, as you know, we often do it by trial and error.
Right.
But when you access that higher thought, you can do incredible things. And we all have these powers, and haven't developed them in most cases. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. So does this give any credence to life after death?
Yes, I think so. I think it makes perfect sense that we are, spiritual beings, energy beings, that we transcend a physical body, that we're not just, old theories that we're just animals from the dust, or really archaic theories, that the whole idea of evolution is that it's a type of physical evolution. The physical forms change, that may be true. I think the real evolution is consciousness evolution. We move from a certain state to a much higher state, and that we're all destined for that, to a much higher state of consciousness where we have much more creative powers, we have more supermind powers. That's being researched now a lot, the idea of super learning, super memory, super creativity, where we focus the mind as energy, you can make incredible things happen. And I think it really is true. It's happening now, and I know a lot of people researching that. It's really amazing stuff. Yes, it ties into spiritual aspects as well, and it probably changes also all our understanding about what the spiritual world is. And I think a lot of theories put forth there before, systems of belief, are really based upon human egos. So in other words, certain avatars came along, like the great folks who were more illuminated beings, who taught humankind certain concepts, but then egos get into it and build various religions which express their egos, and much of the original information gets supplanted and replaced by ego trips, power trips, control trips, things of that nature.
Wow. Okay. So this could turn organized religion pretty much upside down if it was really proven to be fact. Yeah.
Yes, that's really true. And what we're trying to say is that people can believe what they want to. We're not trying to dispute anybody's belief system. That's up to them what they want to believe. We're trying to say there's a way to integrate these fields together where there's really no contradiction. Most religions focus, for example, upon the idea of very powerful love, the love of a higher being, love of self, love of each other, where you create a connection with all people. I think that can transform the world. So many of the wars fought through history are like religion against religion, or nation against nation. So it's really ego against ego. We need to transcend that and realize, well, if there's a higher being, and we're all part of that, then we're all connected to each other. So it's really like sibling rivalry, people fighting each other, killing each other over delusional beliefs. These are false belief systems. So quantum field psychology tries to integrate all these together and go beyond it to show this is all completely unnecessary because we're all connected to each other and to a higher power, and there's lots of substantiation to believe that. So that was our intent with the film.
I always thought that the fastest way to unite mankind on planet Earth would be for the Martians to invade.
That might be. That's been told in Twilight Zone and lots of
Right.
movies and so forth.
Yeah, it's not a new concept, but I think it's still very
Yeah.
valid because
Yeah.
in that case, we would stop pointing our guns at each other and point them up into the sky. And we would have a united enemy, a purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Exactly true. If we had a united enemy, we might think of, we do have a united enemy of ignorance, of poverty, of wars and so forth, depression. And we need to end all that and come together as one planet to do that. But it's hard to do because, again, the egos get into it. There's language differences. There's belief differences.
Right.
There's a thing called the Worfian hypothesis about language, where language and thought interconnect profoundly. So how we think is influenced by language, and language by how we think. So it's very hard to translate, say, from English to Spanish to French to whatever, because in many cases there's no exact translation. And just think about more abstract thoughts and much more complicated thoughts. So we need to find ways to integrate the world together and so forth. That's something Thomas Young also worked on back in 1801, 1803, the guy who did the double slit experiment. Being a polymath, he's looking into how to integrate all the world languages. He studied some 400 languages, trying to find how they all connected. So a lot of these folks have the right idea how we connect all these different systems together to create one world, but also a world of freedom, not a world of enslavement under one dictatorship, which some people are trying to do or have tried to do. So.
Well, if you think about even just that step, try to get the world to unite on which language we should use. Good luck. You would probably have about 4 in the contention. You'd have English, Spanish, probably Urdu, and Chinese.
Probably so. Yeah. That's right. So that's why we went to math also, because mathematics is a universal language.
True.
So people in every culture and so forth study math, understand what math means. Then we apply it to the physical world, we get physics, and then physical chemistry, organic chemistry, and so forth. But math is a universal language, and that also led a lot of computer systems development. So the world now is connecting up at a virtual level in ways it never has before. So there's new communication around the world, which is really stunning. We're able to sit here like thousands of miles away and talk about topics you can then put out to people all over the world. It's just amazing this is even possible. So the world has moved ahead massively in its ability to think in new levels and to create a whole new world based upon much higher concepts like love for each other, respect, kindness, goodness, not ego, not who's more powerful, not who owns more stuff and all this, but much better concepts.
Well, let's hope it keeps moving in that direction. Dr. Ron, we've got to wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have a website or for your film or something you want to give?
Yes, thank you. You can best find the film on Amazon Prime. It's called The Endless Question. It's free on Amazon if they have a membership. If they don't have membership, it's very, very nominal charge to download it or get a DVD. And our books are on Amazon as well. The first is called 8 Days to Creative Power, but how to tap into and develop your creative abilities. The next is called The Inner Manager, which is a short course itself in how the mind works and so forth. And it's also a very interesting field of study that we got into many years ago. Next is I Love You, God, which is a series of aphorisms or thoughts about how to connect to divine ideas. And the last then is the book Quantum Field Psychology, which we published in 2004. And that's the general theory. If scientists want to read that, or mathematicians or physicists, and if people are not into those sciences, and hopefully the endless question, the film itself will answer a lot of their ideas or interests about that. So.
Oh, super. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on the show. This was fascinating. I know we could have gone on for a long time.
Thank you, Douglas. I appreciate it.
Best of luck with the film.
Thank you very much.